my closest friend and business partner, filed papers to force me out of the company we built together from scratch. After betraying me, he looked at me with a smug smile and told me that it's nothing personal, it's just business. He also said that I'm too old and slow to catch up, and the company's board thinks I've lost my edge. After this shocking betrayal, I stayed calm, shook his hand, and wished him well. But by the time he realized what I had set in motion, it was already too late for him. I was sitting in my car outside our company headquarters, legal documents still warm in my trembling hands from the boardroom. My closest friend, who was also my business partner of 10 years, had just kicked me out of the company I helped build from nothing. What happened next showed me that even the deepest wounds can become the foundation for the most satisfying justice. For you to get the full story, please permit me to start from the beginning, because this story isn't just about betrayal, it's about patience, planning, and the kind of revenge that tastes sweeter when served ice cold. My name is John Davoren, and I'm a 72-year-old retired engineer and businessman from a quiet town in Vermont. I completely trusted my closest friend, who was also my business partner, and that trust nearly cost me everything I had worked for since retirement. It all began 10 years ago when my longtime friend Maurik Hensley approached me with an idea that would change both our lives forever. Maurik had this brilliant concept for a renewable energy company, but he didn't have the funding to make it happen. He needed someone with steady income and savings to help him get started, and I was that someone. At 62, I had just retired from my engineering career and was running a small consultancy on the side. When Maurik shared his vision for Solivara Dynamics, which later became the company's name, I didn't just offer him a loan. I offered him a full partnership. I poured my entire retirement savings into his dream, believing that loyalty and friendship meant something in this world. We both founded the company together, and since it was Maurik's original idea, he naturally became the chief executive officer. The business started slowly, barely bringing in enough revenue to cover our basic expenses, and sometimes it looked like we might fail completely. But I stayed committed to our shared vision, even when potential investors turned us down repeatedly and contracts fell through. Through sleepless nights spent reviewing business plans and countless meetings with skeptical bankers, I kept investing my own money to keep us afloat. For 10 long years, I watched our small company grow inch by inch, believing that eventually our hard work would pay off. Then something incredible happened. After a decade of struggle, Solivara Dynamics exploded into a billion-dollar empire practically overnight. The renewable energy market had finally caught up to our vision, and suddenly we were the company everyone wanted to work with. It should have been our shared victory, the moment when all our sacrifices finally made sense. Instead, Maurik chose that moment to destroy everything we had built together. One ordinary Tuesday morning, I walked into our usual boardroom expecting to discuss our latest quarterly results and expansion plans. Instead, I found legal documents waiting for me on the polished mahogany table, and Maurik sitting across from me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The papers were termination documents of my co-founding position, effective immediately, and they had already been filed with the board of directors. Maurik informed me that the board had decided I was too old to keep up with the company's rapid growth. He explained that my engineering background was no longer relevant in the modern business world, and that my presence was actually holding back their progress. I sat there in stunned silence as the man I had trusted like a brother calmly explained how he had been planning this move for months. The betrayal didn't hit me like a lightning bolt. It seeped in slowly, like poison spreading through my bloodstream. Every memory of our friendship became a dagger twisting deeper into my chest as I processed what was happening. I thought about the countless times I had bailed Maurik out of personal debt during our early years together. I remembered the sleepless nights I spent drafting business models while he was out networking at expensive dinners. I recalled the birthday celebrations I missed with my own family because I was working late to keep our company alive. The second mortgage I took on my house just to cover payroll during our worst financial crisis came rushing back to me. I had paid our employees from my own savings account when cash flow dried up completely, never asking for recognition or extra compensation. I had defended Malrik's risky business decisions to skeptical investors, trusting him completely even when others questioned his judgment. All of those sacrifices, all of that unwavering loyalty, had led to this moment, sitting across from someone who looked at me like I was nothing more than an obstacle to remove. The grief I felt wasn't just about losing the business. It was like mourning the death of someone I had loved as a brother. But here's what Malrik didn't know, and what would ultimately become his downfall. I hadn't been as blind as he thought. For the past 3 years, I had been watching his behavior change in subtle ways that made my engineer's mind start calculating risks and preparing contingencies. It started with small things that most people would have overlooked completely. Malrik began scheduling important meetings during times when I had medical appointments or family obligations, then making crucial decisions without my input. He started forming partnerships with other companies without consulting me first, even though our original agreement required both signatures on major contracts. I noticed him having quiet conversations with board members that stopped abruptly whenever I entered the room. He began questioning my technical recommendations in front of clients, undermining my expertise in ways that seemed designed to make me look outdated. These weren't random events. They formed a pattern that told me he was preparing to push me out. So while Malrik thought I was growing too old and comfortable to notice his scheming, I was actually preparing for exactly this moment. 3 years ago, I hired an independent financial auditor under the pretense of conducting routine compliance checks on our books. The real purpose was to document every financial decision and partnership Malrik made without proper authorization from both co-founders. Even more importantly, I had quietly begun transferring portions of my ownership shares into a private trust managed by a shell corporation registered in a foreign country. Every transaction was completely legal and properly documented, but the ownership trail was nearly impossible to trace back to me directly. By the time Malrik filed his termination papers, I had moved 38% of the company's voting power into accounts he knew nothing about. The truly brilliant part of my preparation involved a woman named Vera Tamsin, who worked as a secretary in our investor relations department. Most people barely noticed Vera because she kept to herself and did her job quietly without drawing attention. What Malrik never knew was that Vera had worked for me years earlier during my consulting days, and I had helped her find this position after she was unfairly laid off from a larger firm. Vera never forgot how I had supported her during that difficult time, and she became my eyes and ears inside the company's financial operations. Through her access to investor communications, she fed me information about minority shareholders who were considering selling their stakes. I used this intelligence to purchase additional shares through third-party buyers, slowly accumulating voting power that remained invisible to the board. While Malrik was busy polishing his public image and planning his sole takeover, I was systematically building a network of allies and legal safeguards. The man who thought he was outsmarting an old engineer had actually walked straight into a trap that had been 3 years in the making. Looking back now, I realized that my engineering background had taught me something Malrik never understood. The most elegant solutions often look simple on the surface, but they're built on incredibly complex foundations that take years to construct properly. Now, before we proceed, it's very important to say that if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. By liking, subscribing, and even leaving a short comment of where you are watching from, you are helping me grow this channel so that other people can find this video and learn the graceful wisdom tips that it offers. I share real stories from people who face tough situations just like this. These stories aren't just for entertainment. They're meant to help us learn and grow wiser. We can sometimes become vulnerable, and that's why it's so important to learn from the experiences and mistakes of others. Together we can protect ourselves and protect each other through shared wisdom. Now back to our story. The real catalyst for my revenge on Malrik hadn't actually started with my own betrayal. It began 5 years earlier with a scene that still haunts me today. I was working late in my office when I heard raised voices coming from a conference room down the hall. Through the glass walls, I could see Malrik standing over a young man named Bryson Vale, gesturing angrily while Bryson sat with his head in his hands. Bryson was one of our earliest employees, a bright and dedicated logistics coordinator who had helped design the shipping systems that later became the backbone of our entire operation. He worked longer hours than anyone else in the company, often staying until midnight to ensure our deliveries went out on schedule. His wife had just given birth to their first child, and I knew he was struggling financially like most young fathers. That evening, Malric was terminating Bryson over a single shipping error that had caused a minor delay in one of our contracts. It wasn't a major mistake, just a miscommunication about delivery dates that cost us maybe a few $100s in penalties. But Malric treated it like Bryson had deliberately sabotaged the entire company, refusing to listen to any explanations or consider the man's years of loyal service. I immediately went to Malric's office and pleaded with him to reconsider the decision, explaining how valuable Bryson was to our operations. I reminded him about all the late nights Bryson had worked without complaint, and how his systems had saved us thousands of dollars in efficiency improvements. But Malric's response chilled me to the bone. Malric told me that if I wanted to babysit incompetent employees, I could do it on my own time. The next morning, Bryson came to my office with tears in his eyes, begging me to intercede on his behalf with Malric. His wife was still recovering from childbirth. Their rent was due in 3 days, and without his job, they would be homeless within a month. I promised him I would speak to Malric again, this time in front of the entire board of directors. During that board meeting, I laid out Bryson's entire history with the company, his dedication, his innovations, and his family situation. I argued that good employees deserve second chances when they make honest mistakes, and that our success depended on treating people with dignity and compassion. But Malric shut me down with a fury I had never seen before, slamming his fist on the table and declaring that we weren't running a charity organization. The humiliation I felt in that moment wasn't just personal. It was the realization that the man I had trusted and supported for a decade had lost every trace of human decency. Watching Bryson clean out his desk later that day, knowing his family would suffer because of Malric's heartless decision, something fundamental changed inside me. That was when I began documenting everything Malric did, every decision he made without consultation, every partnership he formed in secret. I started building my network of information sources and legal protections not because I was planning revenge, but because I finally understood that Malric would eventually turn his cruelty toward me. And I was absolutely right to prepare, because 5 years later, he did exactly what I had predicted. When the moment finally came for me to execute my carefully constructed plan, I felt no guilt about what I was going to do to him. A man who could destroy someone like Bryson without a second thought deserved to experience that same helplessness himself. The morning after Malric handed me those termination papers, I made a single phone call to Vera Tamsin. She had been monitoring the share transactions and board communications for months, waiting for my signal. Within hours, she had triggered a series of legal notifications that would shake the foundation of everything Malric thought he controlled. The first notification went to the Securities Commission, requesting a review of all major ownership transfers within the past 12 months. This wasn't an accusation of wrongdoing. It was simply a routine audit that would freeze any further board decisions until the review was completed. The second notification went to our insurance company, informing them that there had been a dispute over executive authority and requesting clarification about coverage during leadership transitions. This created a legal hold on any major policy changes or executive decisions. The third and most important notification went directly to the board members themselves, informing them that a significant minority shareholder was challenging the termination decision and demanding an emergency meeting to review the circumstances. What Malric didn't anticipate was how quickly those legal notifications would unravel his carefully constructed takeover plan. Within 24 hours, the board was in complete chaos as lawyers and auditors descended on our offices to review every decision made in the past year. The emergency board meeting I had demanded was scheduled for the following Friday, giving me exactly 1 week to present my case. But then something unexpected happened that nearly destroyed everything I had worked toward. One of the proxy investors I had been using to accumulate shares suddenly backed out of our arrangement, selling their entire stake to an investment firm that had close ties to Maurik. In a single transaction, my voting power dropped from 38% back down to just under 30%, putting me below the threshold I needed to challenge his authority effectively. I spent 3 sleepless nights recalculating every possible scenario, trying to find another path forward as my carefully constructed plan seemed to crumble around me. The engineering mind that had served me so well was now working against me, showing me exactly how slim my chances had become. I began to wonder if my desire for justice had blinded me to the reality that sometimes the bad guys actually do win. That's when Vera Tamsin made the move that changed everything and revealed the true genius of having patient, loyal allies. She had been quietly documenting a pattern of behavior that went far beyond anything I had noticed, keeping detailed records of how Maurik systematically excluded minority voices from important company decisions. Her report showed how he had been consolidating power not just against me, but against every board member who questioned his authority. The Friday morning board meeting began with Maurik looking confident and relaxed, clearly believing that his last-minute stock purchase had secured his victory. He presented his case for my removal with the same cold efficiency he had used to fire Bryson Vale 5 years ago, treating my decades of service like an inconvenient obstacle to progress. But when Vera stood up and presented her documentation to the board, the atmosphere in that room shifted completely. Her evidence painted a picture of authoritarian leadership that made several board members deeply uncomfortable, especially the 2 undecided votes who held the balance of power in their hands. The final vote was closer than I had ever imagined it would be, but justice prevailed by the narrowest possible margin. The board not only reversed Maurik's termination decision, but offered to make me the chief executive officer of the company we had built together. I declined that position immediately, because revenge was never about gaining power. It was about ensuring that people like Bryson Vale would never again be treated as disposable. Instead, I insisted that we install a new leadership team built around fairness, inclusion, and respect for every employee regardless of their position in the company hierarchy. Maurik was stripped of all executive authority and reduced to a ceremonial advisory role where he could watch helplessly as the company culture shifted away from his harsh management style. What happened next showed me that even when justice wins, the defeated don't always accept their fate gracefully. After the heated board meeting, Maurik sat completely motionless in his office, staring at the board's final decision document as if willing the words to change. I watched through his glass door as the blood slowly drained from his face, and the full reality of his situation finally sank into his consciousness. All the confidence and smug assurance that had carried him through our confrontation just hours earlier shattered like glass hitting concrete. He stood up so abruptly that his chair knocked over behind him, then began pacing back and forth like a caged animal whose world had suddenly become far too small for his ambitions. When he stormed into my office minutes later, the transformation was complete. The calm, commanding voice I had known for over 10 years now trembled with barely controlled fury. He demanded to know how long I had been planning this move against him, his words coming out in sharp, angry bursts that revealed how thoroughly I had caught him off guard. I chose to remain silent during his outburst, partly because I knew that any response would only fuel his rage further, but mostly because I was genuinely shocked by the depth of his reaction. My silence seemed to make everything worse for him, as if my refusal to engage in his anger was the final insult he couldn't bear. He told me that I would regret what I had done, his eyes burning with the kind of humiliation that comes from being outmaneuvered by someone you had underestimated completely. He insisted that he had built the company just as much as I had, that he had made it into what it became, and that I had no right to take it away from him. There was absolutely no peace in his defeat, no acceptance of the consequences of his actions, and no recognition that his treatment of employees like Bryson had created the very situation he now found himself trapped within. As he stormed out of my office, slamming the door with enough force to rattle the windows, it became crystal clear that this wasn't over for him. In the weeks that followed, I found myself standing alone in the parking lot after work, watching employees walk past me with genuine smiles on their faces. The atmosphere in the office had changed completely, becoming the kind of workplace where people like Bryson would be given second chances instead of being discarded for honest mistakes. But my victory felt hollow, because I had discovered something about Maverick that changed how I understood his cruelty entirely. I stood at the doorway that quiet afternoon. The revenge was done, but it didn't bring the peace I thought it would. After a moment, I stepped into Maverick's office. He looked up, tired and calm. No pride, no anger. Just a worn-out man carrying years of pressure. He asked if I came to gloat. I said no, I came to understand why he did what he did to me. For the first time, Maverick spoke openly. He told me about his father, a textile factory owner, who lost everything after being betrayed by someone he trusted. That betrayal destroyed the business and his father. Maverick said he was just 14 when he watched the man he looked up to fall apart under the weight of broken trust. With a shaky voice, he said he swore that would never happen to him. He explained that since that day, he held on tighter and trusted less. Then he looked at me and said, "Even you, John, especially you. I couldn't take that risk." I sat there in silence. The bitterness between us turned into something deeper. It turned into grief. I understand now, but still, I couldn't completely forgive him. Understanding his motivation didn't excuse what he had done to me or to Bryson, but it helped me realize that his cruelty came from a place of deep fear rather than pure selfishness. The man I had hated was someone who had been broken by betrayal just as completely as he had tried to break me. And that's when I understood the most painful truth of all. In my quest for justice, I had become exactly the kind of person who destroys others to protect myself. Looking back now, I don't know if what I did was right or wrong, only that revenge always costs more than we expect to pay. My story teaches us several important lessons, but there are two important lessons I want to highlight for you. 1. Friendship doesn't replace legal agreements. We must recognize that even the closest friendships can change over time, and we should protect ourselves legally in any business partnership regardless of personal history. 2. Character is revealed in how people treat the vulnerable. When someone shows you their true character through how they treat vulnerable people, believe what you see rather than making excuses for their behavior. Comment below and tell me what part of John's story resonated most with you. If you want more content like this that helps us learn from the experiences of other seniors, please like and subscribe to this channel. Until next time, keep living with grace and purpose.